Hi, you're listening to Burn Beautiful, a podcast for women ready to step into their divine feminine leadership so they can create a life of joy, health, and impact beyond their wildest dreams. Here, you'll learn how to heal stress from the inside out, reclaim your vibrant health, and master your energy so you can lead powerfully without burning out and actually enjoy the moments that matter most in this one beautiful and precious life. I'm Nicole Whitaker, burnout and leadership coach, founder of Lead Up Health, and creator of the HERS method. Welcome. Welcome back to the Burn Beautiful podcast, where we help women prevent or end burnout so they can step into full soul-aligned leadership of themselves and of others. In today's episode, we're talking about health, specifically physical health, not as a side note or a self-care checklist, but as the critical foundation for a sustainable and successful leadership. Holistic health is the foundation of my organization entitled Lead Up Health. It came from the research, the proven research that shows that when people are healthy, when they're leading from well-being, organizations improve. And McKinsey research points to this in numerous articles. One example is that organizations that prioritize the well-being and the health and the culture of individuals in their organization actually see 3 times the shareholder returns than those that don't. And so when we prioritize individual health and organizational health, then we are going to be more successful. We're going to be able to lead our teams more successfully. Holistic health is also the first of the pillars in the HERS program that I offer for transformational leadership, and that is for a reason. It is the essential first step in stopping the stress cycle so that you can step into your full, authentic power as a leader. So for me personally, when I hit my burnout wall, I didn't just feel tired. It wasn't just exhaustion. I felt like a stranger to myself and completely disconnected from my body. At the time, I had 3 kids in diapers and approximately 0 minutes of me time or self-care time. And I was deep in survival mode. So I recognized this. And initially, I tried some workout and nutrition programs and plans, but there were 2 major issues with what I tried. First of all of the programs I tried assumed that I had hours to meal prep or hit the gym. Not possible for me in that stage of life. And the second is they gave me plans and tools, but they didn't actually address the root causes or really acknowledge the unique circumstances for women. So, no one is talking about the chronic invisible stress women live with every day and the impact that has on health and how we need to approach health. No one was naming the fact that most health models were created around male physiology. And in fact, most of the research on health out there was done on men, not women. But here is the actual truth. Women's bodies are cyclical, right? We move through hormonal shifts, for example, perimenopause, and then a lifetime of cultural conditioning that tells us our bodies are here to be looked at, to be desired, to make babies, but not to be lived in, not as the vessel that they really are for our life. So eventually, I started working through some of these things on my own and piecing together what would actually work, not just for a body, but for my body in my real life circumstances at that time. And within weeks, once I started approaching health this way, from listening to myself, I was no longer living in a state of chronic stress. I started to feel like myself again. So this shift was so incredibly profound that I began studying holistic health on my own, consuming the podcasts, the research, anything I could get my hands on. And eventually, so many people were coming up to me and asking me, how they could make the same shifts that I decided to become a certified integrative nutrition coach. So today, I'm going to give you a better approach to health, one that will honor your biology, your lifestyle, and your leadership. By the end of this episode, you are going to walk away with a breakdown of 4 damaging health myths that most women have unknowingly internalized. This was my case, and how these myths sabotage real, lasting change when it comes to health, stress, and leadership. You're going to walk away with a deeper understanding of how stress and leadership are intertwined with your sleep, with your movement, and your nutrition. And you're going to have three simple, doable actions you can take today to support your health, your energy, and your leadership. Because when you support your body, not as a machine, but as the sacred vessel that it is for your life, for your leadership, for your mission, everything else gets a whole lot easier. We're going to start off by dismantling 4 health myths for women that we have often unknowingly to ourselves internalized. And if we have internalized these myths, it can get in the way of having real lasting change when it comes to our health and our leadership and our stress management. So, the first myth is that your genes control your health. We've been told that if something runs in the family, it's basically our fate, right? That's the belief that I grew up under. For example, high blood pressure, diabetes, depression. The messaging is it's in your genes, so that's just how things are. But that is actually outdated science, and it's incredibly disempowering. That means that our health is out of our hands. Fortunately, that's incorrect. Enter epigenetics. This is the science that proves that your genes are not the final word. In fact, studies show that up to 90% of chronic illness is driven by lifestyle and environment, not genetics. Yes, this includes weight. You are not a victim of your biology. You are a co-creator of your reality. This is great news, right? This means you have agency. Your daily choices, not just your DNA, can determine your long-term health. The second myth is that your body's main purpose as a woman is to be desired and bear children. So let's get real. Women's bodies have historically been seen as property. So for male consumption or childbearing, from being literally sold into marriage, right? To phrases that live on like trophy wife. We've been taught to see our bodies as something to manage or shrink or change or be ashamed of as completely tied to our worth. But our body is so much more than that. I once heard someone say, we've been told our soul lives in our body, but actually our body lives in our soul. And that resonated so deeply with me because it highlights how incredibly powerful and beautiful our bodies are and how they are a vessel, they are the vehicle for ourselves in this life. So a real personal example for how I switched my own mindset during this time is that after carrying twins, I still have like a little bit of extra skin just right above my belly button. And the old me was like, "Oh, I could never wear a bikini again. I'm so embarrassed." I felt very unattractive because of it. But the current me, I look at that and I am in awe because it shows that my body carried 2 humans at the same time to term, which is a miracle. And so, really shifting that mindset from shame to reverence of my body was and has been a game changer because it makes me feel empowered. I feel how incredible and miraculous my body really is, rather than this thing I need to maintain to be desirable. Myth 3 is that there's one right way to be healthy. Nope, just nope. So, health is bio-individual, which means what works for someone else might not work for you, but it also means, and this is super important, what worked for you in your 20s is not going to work for you in your 40s, especially if you're navigating perimenopause, a high pressure job, and parenting. From a biological standpoint, as hormones shift, your body's needs shift. So, for example, in your 40s, muscle building becomes essential for hormone regulation and longevity, but earlier in life, not so much. And your life circumstances matter, right? If you're juggling kids and a career and caregiving, and you're expecting yourself to hit the gym 7 times a week, that is unrealistic and it's counterproductive, right? That just adds stress, which increases cortisol, which leads to inflammation, belly fat, and burnout. So the key idea here is that your needs evolve, which means your health plan must evolve too. And yes, you can be healthy at any stage of life within any circumstances. And later, I'll show you how I shifted my approach to meet myself where I was. Myth 4, this is a big one. This concept that healthy means on trend. So, throughout history, body ideals have changed with every decade. From like way long ago to be pale and plump, because it represented wealth, to then back, I think it was in the 60s. I don't know if you all remember that, the model Twiggy. It was literally she was the shape of a twig, very thin, no curves at all. And so then that was the beauty ideal. All the way today to we have people that we look up to, such as Kim Kardashian, and we're literally trying to enhance our bodies to have that hourglass figure, even if that's not how our body is shaped. So if you keep chasing what culture says is in, you're not going to feel whole. Now, to be clear, I don't think it's disempowering to want to feel desirable. As a matter of fact, I think it's fun and super empowering to feel beautiful and powerful and desirable in my body. But here's the shift. We want to feel desirable in our own unique, healthy bodies, not based on some random trend, because wellness has nothing to do with aesthetics. It is about function, it is about freedom, it is about increasing our health span in addition to our lifespan, meaning how long we are able to be healthy throughout our lives. And it's how you feel in your own skin. So we also have to acknowledge the conditioning that we receive growing up, right? How your mom talked about her body, the messages you got about weight, food, and worth. This shapes your beliefs and impacts your approach to health. I had a client once whose mother was naturally thin and really emphasized that as the beauty standard. And this client resisted lifting weights because she was afraid of this misconception of bulking up, despite all of the science and all of the research that shows building muscle for women, especially once you enter your 40s, is crucial for a long and healthy life. So, this is not a criticism. It's to say that if you have felt like your health is on a yo yo or it's hard to stick to something, it's often because we need to first start with some of these beliefs that you might have been programmed to hold and work with those. So, it's worth taking the time to reflect or to journal on some of these myths that I've shared and how they might be still influencing you. So now that we've addressed the 4 myths of health, we're going to get into health, stress, and leadership with the big 3. And the big 3 are sleep, movement, and nutrition. So let's explore how your physical health directly impacts how you lead through these 3 lenses. So let's start with sleep because it is the foundation. If you are not sleeping, you are not leading to your full potential, period. Full stop. Sleep is where your brain detoxes, your body repairs, and your nervous system resets. Even partial sleep deprivation reduces emotional regulation, decision making, and empathy. These are clearly non negotiables for strong, authentic leadership. So you want to ask yourself 3 things. 1, are you getting enough sleep? We need 7 to 9 hours. 2, are you getting quality rest? This means deep sleep and REM, and which is rapid eye movement, and light sleep. And 3, are you consistent? So going to bed and waking up at the same time each day to make sure that circadian rhythm is set. For me, burnout hit super hard when my kids were tiny because my sleep was super fragmented. Imagine 3 under the age of 2 and all of the night wakings. So, one of the first steps that I took to get myself out of chronic stress and burnout was to ask my husband to take the night shifts. That's right. I did not ask him to take some of them. I asked him to take all of them. And here's why. His body falls asleep easily after he is woken up. For me, it doesn't. So at the time, I'd be up from 2 on if I was woken up. And this was a big deal for me. It was hard for me to make this ask, and it was definitely a couple conversations. It took a lot of mindset work on my part to stop believing that I had to be the middle of the night hero, right? To be a good mom. And it took real conversations between my husband and I to make this happen and to make it feel good for him too. Um, but it changed everything, right? I was able to lean in other ways, and he was able to lean in this way for me. And it changed everything. It was the single biggest shift in my clarity and my energy, and how I finally was able to begin to feel and lead like myself. So, depending on where you are, you want to start with one of these three actions. So, if you are struggling with sleep consistency, so say your sleep window, you go to bed anywhere between 9 and 11. Try narrowing it 30 minutes at a time. So instead of between 9 and 11, 9:30 and 11, then 9:30 and 10:30. And slowly but surely get that window smaller for your bedtime and your wake time. Once you have a consistent pattern, an occasional disruption or change is fine. But for the most part, we really want to be going to bed within the same 30-minute window and waking within the same 30-minute window. If you're not getting enough sleep, try going to bed just 15 minutes earlier this week. If you're struggling with quality, I want you to make sure your room is cold and dark and screen free an hour before bed. And if you're experiencing middle of the night wakings, which has been my struggle lately, it is really important that you go to your OBGYN or a functional medicine doctor to have your hormones checked if you are age 35 plus. All right. Moving on to the second piece, which is exercise. So, exercise, as we have discussed, it's not about the scale. It is about stress regulation and longevity. So, your success cannot exceed your nervous system's capacity to handle stress. I'm going to say that one more time because this is important. Your success cannot exceed your nervous system's capacity to handle stress, right? As you move up the ladder, as you experience increasing success, you will experience bigger challenges. And you have got to have a nervous system that can support you through those challenges. Exercise is the place that I start with my clients to build that stress capacity. It is because it gets you out of your head and back into your body. So let's talk about different forms of exercise, starting with yoga. I think yoga does a great job explaining why exercise is so critical. The word yoga means to yoke. So, to join your inner and your elder self, to become embodied and present in your body again. So, you can imagine a literal yoke, YOKE, from back in the day where it's that wooden thing that would connect two oxen to carry a heavy load. Yoga helps you unite your inner and outer self to carry the weight of life and of leadership. So in my 20s, yoga became my anchor. It really did change everything for me. I had been very disconnected from my body for a variety of reasons, and it led me to get certified as a yoga instructor. But in my 30s, when I had three young ones, I needed something different. I needed something faster, honestly. I didn't have an hour to do yoga. And so more efficient and more empowering. So, what I did for that stage of my life is I just started with 15 minutes of aerobic movement, of biking, or with weights 3 times a week. That's it. And y'all, it changed everything. And when I experienced success or I got stronger in my exercise or when I overcame something challenging in my exercise, it translated into mental toughness. And the research shows that just 20 minutes of movement reduces cortisol and boosts your mood. So the takeaway here is you need to start where you are and what makes sense for your life. So, what does your body need energetically? And what does your lifestyle allow? Dancing in the kitchen counts, right? But the rule here is that you have got to be consistent. So, it is more effective to do 10 minutes of exercise 3 times a week over and over and over again than to have a week where you're exercising every single day, for 60 minutes. Consistency is key here. So the third big piece is nutrition. And this is a huge topic. Again, something we are going to go into much detail in future episodes. What you eat affects your mood, your focus, and your stress levels. So we'll take the classic example of sugar. Stress causes blood sugar spikes and crashes, and sugar contributes to the stress response in the body. So these things are cyclical, one feeds another, and it doesn't just lead to weight gain, it fuels anxiety. But the good news here is what you eat can change your biology, right? So remember epigenetics and that light switch? Food can literally turn genes on and off. So you can think of your body as the hardware, like a computer, and food is the software, like an app, your phone and an app. One easy way to start shifting your macronutrients, so your protein, your fat, and your carbs, so it is the right proportions to fuel energy and health, is to think of it visually. So I once had a mentor say to me, if you can imagine a plate, if you draw a line down the center of your plate, about half of that should be veggies. Then imagine on the other half, you have about 40% of that circle taking up protein. So think of like a fistful. If you make your hand into a fist, about that size, it's about 20 to 25 grams of protein. And then the remainder of the space is, some fat. Fat is actually critical to blood sugar stability and a healthy carb. So this visual, just kind of estimating this on your plate one, it simplifies health. Two, it's going to create balanced macros and it's going to be anti-inflammatory. As a side note, quality matters. This is critical, critical, critical. Again, we'll talk about this later. But as a rule of thumb, you want to choose, as my friend shared with me, I love the way she described this, farm foods, not factory foods. I also think that's a great way to talk about it with our kids, that we want to opt for more farm foods, not factory foods. When I started my nutrition journey, I focus on two things. And I think this is a great place for you to start as well if you want to begin on this journey. One, reducing sugar. I have a major sweet tooth, so this is individual. And then two, eating an actual breakfast with protein. So not skipping it. It is a misunderstanding that if we skip breakfast, we are going to have a lower caloric intake that actually drives hunger down further on in the day. So we want to eat breakfast. This can look like a protein shake with greens or eggs, microgreens, avocado, and for myself, I throw kraut on there. So when I started eating like this, yes, my body composition did shift, but more importantly, I had sustained energy throughout the day. I was less moody and I was able to focus and concentrate more and just lead my team better and show up for my kids better. So start with breakfast, swap out a carb heavy breakfast for protein and greens, and you will feel the difference by lunchtime. All right, let's bring it all together. So, takeaway one, if you have been struggling with your health, it is likely related to stress. And if you've been struggling with stress, you want to start with your health. Now, if you have tried to shift your health in the past and it hasn't stuck, or if you feel like you're constantly on a yo yo with your health and your stress, it is not your fault. You need to start at a different place. It's likely because of two reasons. One, you're working with those outdated beliefs, those myths we talked about, and cultural programming, and that's driving your actions versus a deep belief and value of your incredible, magnificent body. Or two, you have been following approaches that don't fit your physical body or your current lifestyle. So you are a whole system: body, mind, nervous system, and soul. And when you care for your body, not as punishment, but as devotion to this incredible vessel we have been given to enjoy this life, you become unstoppable because real leadership flows from wholeness. And your body is not separate from your brilliance. It is the foundation of it. I hope this episode helped you to reconnect with the truth, which is your body is not in the way. It is the way. Today, we dipped our toes into holistic health, focusing mostly on physical health. In the next episode, we're going to dive into the holistic aspect of health, and I'll reveal the 7-step pathway to health restoration that I coach women through in my HERS Leadership Transformation Program. If this resonated, share it with another woman leader who needs it. Together, we are changing the paradigm. Until next time, stay well, be whole, and burn beautiful. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode sparked something in you, subscribe, and I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to rate and review the show. It is the most powerful way to help other women find it. And if you know someone who is struggling or on the edge of burnout, or simply wants to lead from wholeness, send this their way. Let's grow this movement together. To get exclusive insights, tools, and behind-the-scenes support, join the HERS Insider List at www.leaduphealth.com. And if you're ready to explore working together, whether through coaching or consulting, you can book a free consultation right from the site. Until next time, burn beautiful loves.